your identity isn't based on your flag, your culture. It's just not. Your identity is based on the fruits of the Spirit, the qualities that God put in you. Because if he knew you before he formed you in your mother's womb, then there are God-given qualities that came with the package. And that's who your real identity is. Now, are there things culturally that come with you? But you might have not grown up in the culture. And then you feel like you're not enough of something based on not having that. And that's just not true.
Peace and blessings, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of the Will the World podcast. I am your host, Jazz Will, and today, sitting next to me is the beautiful, the talented, the amazing Franceli Chapman Varela.
Okay.
Huh?
You rolling the R's.
Did I do it?
You did
one and done?
Yeah.
Come on now. Episode over.
Franceli Chapman. Well, my mom says Franceli.
Franceli.
In English, people say Franceli, but Franceli is the way my mother says my name.
Okay.
Chapman Varela. And that's how I was born. My birth certificate originally said Franceli Chapman Varela. When I moved to America and became a citizen, my mom applied for my citizenship as just Franceli Chapman. So I was Franceli Chapman in school and Franceli Chapman then once I was an American citizen. When I came to Los Angeles and became an actress.
and when was this?
I moved here in 2014, so now it's been 9 years. 9 years, it went by so fast.
Yeah.
And I'm black. I'm blackity black. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm also a black woman from a Spanish-speaking country. And so people couldn't get with that concept, especially in Hollywood. And so in order to get seen for roles, I decided to put my mother's last name on my headshot, especially because my mother took $3,000 out of her 401k so I could join SAG-AFTRA.
Oh, yeah.
So
nice.
That I had to honor my mother.
Yeah.
So now it's Franceli Chapman Varela.
Franceli.
Yes.
See, that's how I'm saving out.
Yeah.
So how many people call you Celly? Because I've been calling
goodness.
you Celly for, what's it been, 3 years now?
So a little fun fact about me, for 3 years I lived in a small town in Illinois called Macomb. And so everyone in Macomb called me Fran. Because, our other brothers and sisters don't know how to say Franceli or Celly. So, the others, they wanted to call me Fran. And so I was Fran for a very long time. And when I moved to New York, Fran wasn't cutting it. Fran don't cut it in the Bronx. Yeah. And my first boyfriend, when I was 15 years old, he called me Celly. And that became my rap name when I used to write rhymes, And Celly.
You gonna spit today?
Maybe some poetry. I've become a poet. But yeah, I used to write poetry. I used to write rhymes when I was a kid. And Celly became my name. And then I was a radio personality. And Celly was my radio personality. And it just became so much easier than trying to explain to people Franceli. And then I went through this identity crisis. Am I Fran or am I Celly? Because part of moving to New York was I spoke very proper English. And people wanted to beat me up because they say, you talk white and you think you better than us. So Fran was the proper.
Right.
The one who's very cosmopolitan, who can sit at a gala, who could speak to the president of the university. And Celly was the chick from around the way. You feel me? Celly gonna bring, she gonna bring that sabor, that energy, and it became this thing where I felt like I was sort of betraying the other version of me if I would. And so then I'm like, am I faking it? Am I this? Am I that? And I got to this place in my life where it's all of who I am. It's all of those experiences. So I started really asking people to call me Franceli because I'm all of it. I'm Fran and Celly. But it doesn't bother me when people call me Celly.
Well, you're Franceli in my phone.
Yes.
Franceli in my phone.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'd be like, Celly.
And I love it. Hit me on the Celly. Celly still brings me such great memories. But I think it's important that God gave you a name for a reason, and your parents named you something for a reason. And unless there's really a conviction that it doesn't sit well with your person, then that's a whole other thing. But there's something really powerful walking in the full authority of your name and who you are. Because there's power to that, right? There's power in words, so there's power to your name.
Yeah. And that's something I still struggle with sometimes.
Yes, I'm aware. I hear the podcast.
Yeah, because it's a real thing.
You're like Diddy, you change your name.
Yeah, like just however you know me, just call me by that.
Right.
Because like, honestly, I grew up not liking my name because it was so different. You know, like we were talking about San Antonio earlier. We would go on these trips, and you know, when you go into the gift shops, they got the little keychain. They never have
your name.
You never got your name. So I'm like,
the struggle was real as a kid.
Why I can't be a Michael or Marcus or something? You know, so I can give me a keychain. You know, but a turning point, like the little girls around the school started, you know, making little cute names out of it. So I was like, okay, yeah, all right, I like it. I like it. But even today, the back and forth between, you know, a lot of people call me Jazz Will, and I do actually prefer my real name now. But now there's like, I feel like this branding opportunity with Jazz Will. Like Jazz Will shoot it, Jazz Will do this, Jazz Will do that, you know? And it flows a little better.
Yes.
But yeah, it's kind of, and just the connotations between like people who knew me in the past.
Right.
And I don't want them to be like, oh, that's Jazz Will. I know Jazz Will, that boy.
Yeah,
you know, so
Sally from the Bronx is very different than Franceli the pastor, right? Woo! And we can talk about it. So, you know, that's the thing. It'll always, but that's why it's so important to embrace all of who you are.
Right.
To embrace. So then, here's the thing. If you believe in what God says you're called to be, your opportunity to be put in the light, your opportunity to be put on a platform that's going to make people know your name also comes with the opportunity for you to be exposed, right? Because exposure, that's what it does.
Yeah.
The more exposure you have, the more possibility of being exposed. So I expose myself. You're going to know all of what Sally had going on, doesn't have going on anymore, right? So then no one can come out the woodworks once I have a certain level of exposure and say, well, Sally used to do. Sally done already told the people.
That's an 8 mile.
Right. I already done told the people how far God has brought me. Because I can't walk in the shame or the condemnation of, I didn't know better, so I wasn't doing better. And there's something powerful and beautiful about those scars, the way I used to live, the lack of worth I had in myself that made those decisions to now saying, look, God has restored that time. God has restored those mistakes. And now I'm walking in his newness. And whether you rock with that or not, that's your business.
Right. Yeah.
But this is me, and that's what it is.
I love that. Yeah,
so do that. You can call yourself today, tomorrow, whatever you need.
Right. Yeah. I think sometimes, you know, I've fallen victim to trying to make it make sense in this new era that we're living in between, you know, like social media, branding, entrepreneurship. So I'm always overthinking something.
So can I put something on your lap?
Of course.
Did Jesus make sense when he came into this world?
No, not at all.
And did he not become one of the most famous people on the planet? We still talking
about him.
So it's not about fitting in with the time or the culture.
Right.
It's about blowing the whole thing out the water. And that's really what makes you stand out and what makes you, quote unquote, famous. The most famous people are the people who went out the box, who didn't follow the trend, who completely are like, whoa, what's that?
Right.
Those are the people we pay attention to, right?
And you know what's crazy? You sound like me talking. Like I've had this conversation where I can't tell you how many people where I've been in that seat.
Right.
But like I said, I've fallen victim to it as well.
We all
you know, it's just like, and it's really within that aspect. Everything else, y'all going right, I'm going left.
Right.
But when it comes to that, I'm like, oh. But nah, we figuring it out though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We need to be reminded. We need to encourage each other. We need to push each other. That's why it says iron sharpens iron, right? Because that means you're already an iron. You know, you're not a dull pencil. And even when there are moments where you're dull, it doesn't change that you're a pencil, which means you can be sharpened.
Exactly.
So, you know, sometimes we're just having a dull day or a dull moment. And someone comes along whose pencil is sharp and reminds you, hey, go get sharpened real quick. You know?
No, it's real. It's real. And that's one of the reasons why I'm like, even when I'm having an off day, I want to be that person for somebody. Yeah. Like, because Bill be talking about me all the time. Like, when we be out and about, like, I just make random conversations with people. Like, they might speak, and then I might throw, like, a little fake laugh in there, but I know it's making them feel good. Yeah. And we just keep it pushing. Like, no harm, no foul.
Right.
You know what I'm
someone's
saying?
day. So I'm sure she appreciates that about you, but at the same time, she's like, it takes us an extra 30 minutes to get to where we going.
No, it's not that long. My pops is that person.
Oh, talks
not
to
me.
everybody.
Yo, he talk to everybody. We're gonna walk in Popeyes and you swear he know everybody in there. Me, I'm just gonna give a little nugget, drop it in there, I'm out. And then I'm going, yeah, we got stuff to do.
I'm definitely someone who, everywhere I go, I seem to run into somebody. I was like in the middle of nowhere. My mom was here and I took her to Solvang, California. If you've never been, it's so cute. It looks like you're in Denmark. They literally here in California have the windmills. They created this whole little cute town that looks like Denmark. I'm in the middle of Denmark and I run into this Dominican cat I know. Like, what are the odds? 2 Dominicans in the middle of Solvang, California. Like, I'm that person. Yeah. And my father was like that too. So I love that. I love that. Yeah. There's nowhere I go where I meet a stranger, right? That's pretty cool. I think that's a good quality to have.
You know, so when you were talking about your name a few minutes ago, it made me think about, like, because we know, Black Latina, proud. I love it.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time in which you were associating those names with like different parts of your identity as well? Or was it just literally just like that had nothing to do with it?
It's interesting because my father's name was Francisco. So that's how I got Franceli. And because my father was an anthropologist and my father was as dark as you, I was Black. Like there wasn't, it was with my other family members that it became, you're not really Black, you're Dominican, or you're Indian, don't claim Black. Like then those conversations start, or when I was in New York, in Washington Heights, in a Dominican, predominantly Dominican neighborhood, in a predominantly Dominican school, and the girls are like, you think you white, you think you better than us. Like those things were put on me. But I came into this world feeling really rich of all the culture because my dad had a PhD in the study of people. So it's like I got to be around all kinds of cultures and people. And I was just like, oh, yup, my music comes from Africa. My plantains come from Africa. My nose, my lips come from Africa. So I was gifted just knowing that since a child. And then I would go out into the world with that pride and that information. And the world started telling me that was wrong. The world started telling me, oh, if you're really Latina, then your hair would be down to your back. If you were Latina, you need to be sexy. You don't dress a certain way. You need to have your hair like this. You need to talk like that. Like there became these boxes that I needed to check off in order to be able to identify with one or the other. And that became really, really frustrating. And it made me, to a certain degree, outside of my family, not hang out with Latin people in terms of friends. I couldn't identify with Latin women. I couldn't too much about how I move in the world is as a Black woman.
Right.
So I went to an HBCU. Most of my friends are Black women because that's where I felt safe, And it became as an adult that I was like, I need to break whatever thorn that came on my side that was put there because I didn't have that before. I loved all people.
Right.
And I love my culture and my people, but it became a thing that when I started really walking in Christ, it's like, how do I have racial reconciliation, not just with white people, because we know that's a thing, white versus Black, but racial reconciliation even within the Latin diaspora, because there's, as you know, Mexicans versus Savis, Puerto Rican versus Dominican. There's so much division that doesn't make any sense. Besides, that's what the colonizer wanted. Right. So I want to be someone that helps bring people to walk in the full authority of their identity. Whatever that looks like. Your identity isn't based on your flag, your culture. It's just not. Your identity is based on the fruits of the Spirit, the qualities that God put in you. Because if He knew you before He formed you in your mother's womb, then there are God-given qualities that came with the package. And that's who your real identity is. Now, are there things culturally that come with you? But you might have not grown up in the culture. And then you feel like you're not enough of something based on not having that. And that's just not true.
Yeah. Around what age did you start experiencing that? Like with your family members and stuff? Like as a teenager? Or
as young as in my mother's womb. Crazy.
Oh, wow.
Like there's a story I tell all the time where my cousin and I are 2 years apart. So when my mom was pregnant, ran up to my mother's stomach, and her sister was making jokes like, tell your auntie what her daughter's hair is going to turn out when she comes out, because my father looked like you. So he would run up to my mom's belly and be like, yeah, that my hair would be.
Yeah.
And so before I was even brought to this world, there was already this stuff about what it meant for my mom. And my father was born in the Dominican Republic. So he's a Dominican man, but he's a Black man, which came with a whole set of things. So it's been going on since I was very young. Like my aunt chopped all my hair off, and my hair was really short because they were like, we got to start over. Like my hair texture would change. You know?
Right. Like we gonna try this one more again.
We're gonna try one more time. So yeah, it started really young.
Yeah. Did you find yourself experiencing any of that, like within the industry at all? Or
of course, you walk into a room and you tell you walk around LA, period, and you start speaking Spanish as a person in my body, and people are like, "Oh wow, your Spanish is really good."
Hey, Duolingo is
it's working out for you. Where did you learn to speak
and how many times a day?
It's really interesting, even 9 years into Los Angeles, to see people respond to hear me speak Spanish. So it happens in the world. Now imagine in front of a casting director. I've gotten in front of Latin casting directors that are confused to why I'm there, and I have to explain who I am, or will be like, oh, but you speak Spanish. And it's interesting because my Mexican brothers and sisters, I love y'all, but there are Mexican brothers and sisters that go into an audition and speak no lick of Spanish. So it's like they'll walk in there and the casting director's like, oh, you don't speak Spanish? Like shocked.
Right.
While with me, it's like, you do? So there's all these preconceived things that you're walking into.
And how do you like mitigate that? You know, how do you deal with that in those moments? Like, because are you good at hiding your reactions?
No. I'm an actress when I'm getting paid for it. I do that for a living. Yeah. I'm not a good actress in my life. I'm not. I do not have a poker face. I am a New York girl that is written all over my face. I wear my heart on my sleeve. It's just part of who I am. And it's interesting because I find it that in the Latin diaspora, it's similar to what we deal with as Black people with white supremacy, right? In terms of like microaggressions. It happens in our community too. There was a Latin woman that was saying to me like, wow, like you're Dominican, but Spanish is not your first language, right? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, but you have no accent. So she believes that when I speak Spanish, I should have an accent. Or when I speak English, I should have an accent. And because when I speak English, my accent is just very much so New York. I'm like, and so I start to explain to her that if I looked like her, this wouldn't be a conversation. And she started trying to defend. And I'm like, there's something about when you try to expose someone's biasness. I'm not calling you racist. I'm just simply trying to bring to your attention the things that have been put into your subconscious that I want to make you conscious of. They automatically try to cover. No, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, it's because you don't have an accent. I said, but again, because I look the way that I look. Because if a white Latina didn't have an accent when she spoke English, you would still assume that Spanish was her first language. And you don't want to admit that. And I don't know why, because it doesn't make me think you're a bad person. But I think we're all too busy trying to make sure we look good and trying to make sure people don't think we're bad people, that we're afraid to fail. We're afraid to learn from our mistakes. We gotta be prim and proper. I mean, hello, that's why we got to a selfie generation. That's why we got to a generation with filters, because we're trying to filter the truth. We're trying to make sure aesthetically we're only presenting the best versions of ourselves. Our social media is our highlight reels.
Of course.
We're not presenting the worst version of ourselves to the public.
Never.
So we're doing that even culturally, even racially. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think to piggyback off that, it has everything to do, like you said, with what's going on inside, because people fear based on their own judgment of themselves. So now they think, oh, no, you're going to look at me like I would look at somebody else who did that thing too. And I never thought I did that. Well, no, yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
And it's okay it's only not okay if you're not willing to change it.
Right.
Because if you didn't know, you didn't know. That's how you grew up. Like honestly, I remember having a conversation with somebody, and I was like, this was during Trump's presidency. I was like, you know what? Trump has been a blessing because people are revealing themselves.
They're getting exposed left and right.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on, keep coming. Like,
show me who you are.
Thank you. That's all I ever asked. You can be as evil as you want to be. I need to know, though.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know, and then that way I can move accordingly. I can protect who I need to protect, and if we all move like that, things would be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
But we have our neighbors. That's a whole other conversation.
We'll be here for a while.
I know, we'll be in this thing. It'll be, crack it down. But no, so walk me through. I want to know what made you make the decision to come to LA, because that's literally coast to coast.
Yeah.
Every
time I'm asked this question, the story changes a bit because, life gives you different revelation about that decision, right? Like, it's like you think you made a decision for one reason and then you see the layers of that decision, right? And so I remember being in New York and, man, I graduated during the recession. I couldn't get a job. So, they tell you go to college and you'll be successful. I went to college and I was back in the Bronx at my mama's house. I make it make sense with all these loans. Right. And I started doing what I know how to do. I was doing theater in New York and I was in this play and I was in this really toxic relationship, very controlling, very manipulative. And I remember when I got out of that relationship, I just needed a break in terms of I just need to be with me and with God. And that's when I started a real relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And California is something I always thought about. If you're an actress, you're going to think about California. Of course. But I'm like, California is not for me. Mm-hmm. Everybody out there doing drugs. You have all these preconceived notions. Yeah. But I had never been to Cali. Mm-hmm. I've never lived here. So it's like, how are you going to make assumptions about a place you've never lived?
Sound like my parents. They be like, y'all Hollywood folk. I be like, what?
But that's what you project your fears because you have to validate your fears. You have to validate your reasons to why you don't do something. Mm-hmm. So, I had all my reasons lined up to why LA wasn't for me. And I remember being in New York and I went on a 40-day fast for the first time ever with a friend of mine. And not because I was about that life. It was really just my friend was part of a church where she was one of the youngest people there. And it was all old people and again, now, of course, I know that something was the prompting of the Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. But that something that says, oh, girl, I'll do it with you so you're not by yourself. She was my best friend at the time. And I'm like, I'll just go along this ride with you, having no idea what I was getting myself into.
What was the fast?
40-day fast. It meant eating a particular way, but I could only eat once a day and pray 3 times a day. Mm-hmm. So no alcohol, and that one meal I could eat as much as I want, but I could only eat once a day. Wow, those 40 days were life-changing. You talk about Trump exposure, that exposed so much. I'll never forget, because I went on that fast, I wasn't talking to the man I was dating at the time. And he called my phone 40 times back to back. And I finally responded hey, I'm on a fast. I don't want to talk to you. And he's like, your fast is of the devil. It's not of God. And I didn't understand. I know now that fasting does this, right? Fasting will expose things in your life, in your own person, in other people. But I didn't understand why all of a sudden someone who was so sweet was so mean and was it was like the demons in him were coming out. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that language back then. Right. So he started saying really mean things about me on Twitter. And we have all the same. We know the same 200 mutual friends, right? The theater community in New York is very small. And so New York became more and more of a place where I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel happy. I was becoming one of those New Yorkers that's annoyed on the train. And I'm someone, as you know, when I walk into a room, I'm full of joy. I'm full of energy. And New York was sucking the life out of me. And I couldn't, again, it's prayer now, but back then it was just contemplation of what is this and what am I feeling? But that is prayer. That going inward, because you were made in his image, God is in you. Going inward is conversations with the Lord. And so I was like, again, things I didn't know. And my best friend called me one day and was like, girl, so I found you a place in LA. I'm like, what? Yeah, I found, because she knew in her heart that I wasn't going to leave. Sometimes God will bring people in your life that push you off the cliff. And so she found me a room in Woodland Hills, which for those who don't know is in Egypt. Like, you got to cross the Nile River to get there. Like, she told me LA, I got here.
It's hot as Egypt too.
Woodland Hills is not LA. That's a whole other. But anyway, you know, she sends me the website to this apartment complex. And they got a gym, and they got a pool, and they got a sauna, and a basketball court. And I'm like, now this girl from the Bronx is like, why would you do this to me? It's like the reference we were talking off camera about the candy. Why would you bring the candy in knowing I can't eat it? Like, I wouldn't be able to afford that. And she's like, it's $500 a month. I said,
what?
You lying. $500 where?
$500?
But I was going to be renting a room in a 3-bedroom apartment. But still, $500 is so realistic in a way that wasn't. California just seemed so unrealistic for me. And I was like, so then I started like thinking like, okay, well, I got some money in my savings and okay, I could leave. And if it don't work out, I can always come back. It's $500. Come to find out. Because see, the Lord will set you up. Come to find out, the apartment was a famous celebrity's baby mom's house. And she's a believer. And it was a low-income apartment that had been in the family for 12 years. My friend conspired and lied to me and said, yo, they're looking for people fast. And if you don't move in like yesterday, it's going to be gone. No one had lived in that room for 2 years. But they said all this to push me. Because if you got time, you gonna twiddle your feet. I got time. So I get on the phone with one of the people that lives in the house, and he's like, it was January. And he's like, can you move February 1st? I was like, can you give me to the 15th? Like, it gave me the nudge, like, I can't miss out on this opportunity. What are the chances that you get to move to this really nice building for $500? But the stipulation was that I had to meet with this woman, because she lived in New York. And this was her apartment that she just used to help people, to bless people. She only charged exactly what the rent was worth. She wasn't making no money off that apartment. She was really a woman of God. And when I met with her at the Starbucks in Harlem, she asked me, she said, so what's your plan? I said, I don't really have one. Like, I feel like the Lord is telling me it's my chance to go. And I'll give it 6 months to a year. And see what happens, and then just come back. It's been 9 years.
I said the same thing. I was like, look, I'm gonna give it a year. If I empty my account and I'm broke and pretty much homeless, I can just come back home.
Yeah.
And here we are. That was 2016.
Look at that.
Yeah.
When you're meant to be in a place. And listen, LA almost took me out. Let's be
clear.
No,
yeah.
LA.
Look, we don't want y'all to misunderstand what we say.
Heart, you know, and I came with such a New York zeal. Like, they were like, you moving to LA without a car? I'm like, I'm from New York. But I was living in Woodland Hills without a car. Like, I was crying. I was depressed. I was on food stamps. I only made $10,000 my first year in LA. It was nothing but the grace of the Lord. I don't know how I ate, how rent got paid, but it did. And so it was one of those things where, like, it really, I thought LA was about my career and LA was about me and God.
Man.
Because.
Look, you see the way I just.
Because, you know, real. At home, you got people to fall back on. You got excuses to why you can't make it, because you're distracted, because you're this, because you're that. You come here, you got nothing but to rest on. Okay, God, what do I do? Where do I go? I don't got no people. Who are my community? Like, everything now is having to be filtered through God. And that's exactly what he wants anyway. That's how he wants your life to be set up. But there were so many things in the way of your life being set up like that. So when you strip it all away and come here with no car and no job,
Mm-hmm.
then he got something to work with. Now I can build off this
Mm-hmm.
because we're starting from scratch.
Right. Yeah, because that was like me too. Like, I remember moving here thinking it was going to be sweet. And then I just started feeling all these things I never felt before in my life because I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm away from my family, friends, the element that I had curated over the years, you know. But just like you said, it was more so about my relationship with God and him being able to mold me into who he needed me to actually be and not who I thought I wanted to be or should be, you know.
And you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
You can sleep at night, and also so many of the blessings, like when family back home calls and says you being real Hollywood. Every piece of Hollywood that I've gotten to experience was because of my obedience in God. You know, when people ask me, well, how did you meet so-and-so? And how did you become friends with such and such? And how do you get to go here and there? Everything really was God's setup. Because like, I didn't do that in my own strength. I didn't try to like submit to that agent or get that job. Like literally every really big blessing in my life came through a God ordained, God intervened kind of thing. It was a setup. So I wouldn't have wanted any other way.
I was just about to ask you, is there one moment, and I'm sure there are many, but like the biggest moment where you were like, that ain't nothing but God?
Yeah, there are a lot of moments. And I think the one that stands out for me the most was, you know, when you move to LA, you work a million jobs. I've been everything. I've been a babysitter, a valet. I've worked at I've done every job, right? And I was working at this establishment where like you come up to the counter, you take an order, I give you a number, and then once your food's ready, I come and bring it to the table. So you're not quite a waitress, but you're not quite just a cashier, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was working in Calabasas. I didn't have a car. And every night, one of the chefs would drive me home. And this one particular night, and this is me keeping it all the way real, Sally, before she was a pastor, right? So we would go next door to the Rouse and get alcohol, right? And not like hard alcohol. We would get like the hard ciders or the whatever.
Yeah, something tasty.
And so the store was already closed. I had already clocked out, but I'm waiting for my ride. So I'm, you know, having some libations. We drinking, we chilling. It's cool.
Yeah.
And man, what I didn't know was that while the cook was in the back closing out, he was also drinking. And so we all get in the car. And him and the girlfriend are arguing. And I'm like, something felt different in my spirit. But again, there's so many times you feel something and say nothing.
Right.
And they were arguing about who should drive. And then she loses the battle and he's driving. We're in the back seat. I literally live 2 minutes down the road from this job. Walking, it takes me like 30 minutes walking because it's like a mile. But in a car, you're there in 3 minutes.
Right.
He gets in the car. None of us have seatbelts on. And he's zooming. He's doing like 50 on the street. And then he gets on the highway. He's passing my house. I'm like, where are you going? You're not taking me home. Oh, I got to go to the dispensary. So there was this urgency to get to the dispensary before it closed. And I don't smoke. And I was just like, I'm stuck in this car. I don't know how fast he was going, but he was going so fast on the 101 that I was fearing something. And I used to have recurring dreams that I would die in a car accident.
Oh, so it was just piling
up. And so I had this moment where I stopped and I started praying. I was sitting right behind the driver by the window. And I'll never forget this prayer. I said, Lord, I plead the blood of Jesus over this vehicle. I said, if it's my time, I know where I'm going. But if it is not, please, Lord, take the wheel. And as soon as I finished that prayer, my head hit the window.
Oh, wow.
The car hit the median. It spun out across the 101. Now, for those who don't live in LA, but you do, you know the 101 is always packed with cars.
Always.
A car did not hit us, and we did not hit a car.
Wow.
We spun out across all 4 lanes and hit a ditch. every person in that car was able to walk out of that car. The car was mangled. The whole hood was up. Like, if you see the picture of this car, you're like, I'll probably send it to you in case you want to put it up on the screen to give the effect. But it's like, you look at this car, no one should have walked away. And the crazy thing about it is that everyone in that car, and this was early in my life, excited, on fire for the Lord, right? And everyone in that car said, we know we survived because you prayed.
Oh, wow.
And that was a moment where I was like, that was nothing but God. He literally took this wheel and made sure that no weapon formed against us prospered. You know, it's like, I think about stories that I want to share that have to do with my career, but I'm like, what? There's nothing more valuable than my life.
Right.
And I think that because I was someone at that job that was just so excited about Jesus, and I was talking about God all the time, the enemy was mad. And the enemy wanted to take me out that night. And he didn't, you know, and that's something really important for me. That moment, that was like year 1 in LA.
Wow.
Year 1. Anyone else would have ran home. I almost did.
Ooh, man, that's amazing. That's amazing. That makes me think of a friend of mine. He was in a car accident on the freeway, and he went through the sunroof, through the moonroof. Walked away.
Jesus.
Walked away.
Nothing but Jesus.
Nothing but. That's amazing. I was not expecting you to say that. I was.
And I thought about it too. I said, Lord, what story do you want me to tell? He's like, the car.
Yeah, of course.
The car.
No, I appreciate you sharing. And so, like, did that moment, did it reinforce what you were already feeling, or did it shape like a new path even?
It did so many things for me. Literally the next day, I was at a protest. Like, I went from that car accident to the next day. At the time, I was going to one church. So, like, one church and Torre were, like, marching in this. We were marching down Hollywood Boulevard for, like, you know, just the things that were going on in the community. And I was out there with my all black on, fist up. And just like, and people were like, you were just in this crazy accident. I said, but if the Lord gave me the ability to walk out of there, then I got to still walk out what he wants me to do, which I believe that I'm an artivist, which means my art is, I'm an activist as much as I'm an artist. And my artist in me, my life and my art both have to have something to say about the world, right? And I wanted to provoke something in you. I wanted to have conversation. I want my life, whether it jolts you the wrong way or it jolts you the right way, it's still jolting you, right? And that is
provoking
enough.
Thought.
It's provoking thought. And that's activism, right? Activism isn't always marching. Activism is just the rebellion of your life. And so I walk out my life to a certain degree as a rebel. And so going to that protest after and saying, oh, I'm going to go even harder for God now. Yeah. Oh, what? Like,
right. That's my dog. Y'all don't know what just happened last night.
Right.
He looked out. Ride or die at that point. Yeah. That's incredible. You know, that reminds me of I'll never forget in college. I went to school at Southern in Baton Rouge. So Mardi Gras in New Orleans, we would drive down, get faded. And I would always be the one driving. One of maybe two other cars.
One. Still a little inebriated, but not as bad.
Not a little. I want to make this clear.
Let's make it clear.
I'll be out of there. But I will lie to myself and say, I'm good.
You can drive.
Because I practiced enough of drinking and driving. One night in particular, I don't remember making that trip. Like, literally, that's an hour drive. At 4 a.m. I remember getting on the freeway. And then the next thing I remember was seeing Baton Rouge 18 miles.
Wow.
And I was like, that ain't nothing but God.
Right.
I was like, I'm here, we're here, because I have maybe 3 or 4 people else in the car as well. We're here for something else, because there's no reason we should be here right now.
Right.
You know, and there are many moments like that when you think, and you're like, I don't see how people don't believe.
Right. I'm the same way. First time I went to the Grand Canyon, I was like, how do you see the vastness of this creation?
Right.
And think, like, who did this?
Right,
What?
Right.
What in the world?
Right. It was just natural. It just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've had any experiences like that recently to where it's like another like kind of like life altering event?
You know, being called into ministry like for real during the pandemic was like, I mean, the pandemic I think was life altering for everyone.
Yes.
I
for
mean,
sure.
it completely changed what we thought was important. You know, like all of a sudden all these people were like, I'm quitting my job. I'm not happy.
Right.
All of a sudden other things became the priority. And while a lot of people had time off during the pandemic, my job revved up. You know, a lot of people started like really looking to faith. And during the pandemic at the time, I was a minister in training because I decided for my 33rd birthday, because I'm extra. I mean, I'm from the Bronx and I'm Latin. I'm extra.
Extra is good.
Woo, child. For my 33rd birthday, I decided to throw a Jesus-themed birthday party.
Wait, what?
Only Sally would do this. So, yes, laugh, because it's ridiculous.
What does a Jesus-themed birthday party look like?
So, when you walk in, it's the Garden of Gethsemane.
Okay.
There was like grass, backdrops. There was flowers. There's a step and repeat, which you take in front of the garden. You know, there's the long supper table. So there's this white dude. Shout out to my boy Drew from my church. He does like upholstery and he works with stuff. So we went to the Home Depot. I said, this is my vision. I want like a long supper table. So he got me this long 12-foot table, or maybe more than that. And man, we had gold plates and fruit. And we made it look like that picture of the Last Supper. Then the birthday party was a worship service. Like it was like I called my friends who are worship leaders, asked them to sing some of my favorite worship songs. And then I preached like my first official sermon, because I had been leading a Bible study as since 2016. No, 2018, I started my Bible study. But for my 33rd birthday, I was like, I'm going to make an announcement to the world that I'm going to become a minister, that I'm like really going into this thing officially. So my pastors were there, my friends were there. And so I had this whole speech prepared that went out the window, and I just spoke from my heart. And that was like my first, I guess, official like sermon.
Intro to the world.
And that's what I did for my 33rd birthday.
Wow.
And so then I said, okay, next thing I'm going to do is go to Israel. I'm going to get baptized. And the whole world shut down. Like that was November of 2019. And then
yeah, we all know
what happened after that. And so that was just these last 3 years have been just like God shaping me and molding me on what it means to be a minister and what it means to really pastor people and what it means to do that in the context of Hollywood. Because my whole family was like, so you a minister now? Like, what that means? So you're quitting acting? Like, and then they're like, wait, you're still an actress? And then people started like expecting me to dress different, to not go out and dance anymore, to never have a drink. Like, no, I'm not drinking on the job and having hard ciders on the side of my employment. That is not happening as a pastor. And the Lord never said that I can't drink. He said to be sober-minded. He said to not be a drunkard. And so it's very important that drinking isn't an idol. It's very important to have a fasted life. So there are times where I go 2-3 months without having a drink. But there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine while I'm at dinner. Like, what? And so, again, the Lord has shown me that it's so important for me to be authentic to who I am, to my identity. He called me. He didn't say, okay, you're going to become a pastor and I'm going to change you. He is going to change you. But that's not what he's concerned about. He's concerned about, I need you as you are, because there's certain people that you touch, that someone else
can relate to and really receive that message.
And so what I get all the time is people saying, wow, I finally feel safe to talk about God, or I finally feel good about wanting to go to church, because I don't feel like I have to have it all together or be this different version of me to get to God. Because I see you and you make God look so cool. Like, and that's such a a blessing to me because me and God were tussling for a while. I've been running from my call for a really long time because I said, all right, Lord, I'm only going to give this to you if you let me be me, you know?
Right.
And he was like, I wouldn't want it any other way. And I was like, all right, cool. I can still be myself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean he hasn't changed me and evolved me. Of course he has.
Yeah, he's just a new version of yourself. It's but like the iPhone doesn't turn into the Samsung.
No.
Yeah.
But like, God doesn't force his will on you.
Right.
He still gave you free will. So he still needs your choice and your yes. And so I had my own stipulations for my yes. But I gave him my yes anyway. And then he could do his thing. And that's what he did.
Have you like found that it's kind of, I'm not going to ask that question. How have you seen it kind of shape what you've done in the industry now, the roles that you're taking, the projects that you're wanting to be a part of, or has it changed?
People are shocked and surprised at the roles that I do, knowing that I'm a minister. They're like, wait, you did? Because again, there is this expectation. You're not going to do anything where you're cussing. You're not going to have no love scene. You're not going to, like, there's just all this stuff. Now, granted, you are not going to see me naked. That's not happening. And again, it's so important for you to know your own convictions. What is let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. So like, I think God is more concerned about making sure that I don't waver, that I'm 10 toes down, than all the semantics, right? Because if I said yes to something that might be a bad look for the kingdom, I'll learn that real fast.
Yeah, for sure.
And then God will help me course correct because there's grace. But if I'm like, I just off the rip, I don't do any of those roles. And then the right bag comes along and you compromise.
Right.
That is so more disappointing to the Lord. Then you'll be like, I'm okay with doing this. I like doing this. I want to do this. I want to represent this story. So for me now, when I get a script, of course, I take it to my Father, right? Me and God pray about it. I'm like, Lord, how we feeling about this? You good? I'm good? Okay, we good. And I'll never forget my friend, she does horror films. And she wrote this horror film specifically for me, and it's called Cult.
That's the one you just won an award for.
That's the one I just won an award for.
Yeah, come on now.
And so she wrote this movie, and when she sent me the script, she's like, look, shout out to Swazina. She goes, I'm sending you the script. Hurry up and read it and tell me no so then I can move on to somebody else. Like there was this expectation that because now I'm a pastor that I would say no to this. And I read the script and I started praying. And the Lord's like, you're going to let somebody else do this? Someone who doesn't know me. Someone who can't represent me. Because in this script, it's true to the name. There's a cult happening. And the man who's over this cult, he manipulates the word of God and he uses it to then violate women. And so, I mean, it's so disgusting that anyone would do that with the word of the Lord, but we know it happens.
Of course, all the time.
And the beautiful thing about my friend who's a filmmaker is she wants to bring those conversations and she does it in a way where she's not disrespecting the church or bashing the church. Is more like, hey, we don't talk about this. We don't talk about people who are in the church and rape people, people who are in the church and molest people, who have not gotten control of their lust, and what happens with that, and how it leaves people hanging, right? And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let a regular actress kill this role. And then when there's a talk back, and there's someone in the audience that's like, yeah, so that's why I don't go to church, because people are like that. There's no one there to defend God.
Right.
To say that God doesn't do that. People do that. And people have twisted who I really am. And my love does not do that. And so God was like, I need a minister of my gospel to represent us well. And what a better way than in an audience where this story will only amplify people's, what we talked about earlier, people's reason and excuse to not get in the presence of God. Because people are leaving churches, not because of God, they're leaving churches because of people. And so I was like, okay, Lord. And I said yes. And then I won Best Actress.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. So again, God's yes will open the doors you never thought, right? Because I've done I think prior to that, some really good work too that in my mind, in my idea, I killed that. I should have won Best Actress. I should have won
a long time ago.
But it's in the obedience of his yes that his blessings come, you know?
Yeah, because only then, will we be able to really see it all the way through. Because we may get the blessing and we may get a little fulfillment from it, may get, some form of riches in that, but it won't be sustainable because one, we're probably not going to acknowledge him. And then we all know as soon as that happens,
downhill.
Let me go ahead and get that from you. See, I gave you a little taste and you acting up.
Yeah.
I've definitely had that happen. And like going back to what you said about being stripped, I relate to that so well. Being stripped all the way down to be able to be built back up, a new form.
And it keeps happening. It doesn't stop.
Always.
Let's be clear. When he said you go from glory to glory, level to level, you got it. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to have 5 brothers. So I played video games growing up, right? Like Mortal Kombat, Ninja Turtles, Super Mario, Donkey Kong. Like those were my jams.
Yeah.
And so you would beat one level. Okay, you're happy, you're excited, you killed that guy. But then you go to the next level and you're starting at the beginning of that level. And then gotta go through all the levels
and get to that
get to the super boss at the end of that level. And that's what happens in this journey and this walk. Like, okay, you conquered one thing and then now, I gotta start over and be stripped down again and be built back up to get ready for this next thing I gotta conquer that's much bigger than the last thing. And so it's about just staying ready. Staying ready for the battle because the battle is every day. First of all, in LA, just leaving your house is the battle. Being on this freeway is the battle. I just preached about it on Sunday. The Lord is delivering me from road rage.
You got road rage?
I am not a minister or a believer when you in my car. Like, I'm just going to keep it 1,000. My sister got in the car with me and she's like, whose minister are you? Because what is wrong with you? I am like, what? Why do you drive?
We gonna have to do an episode of road rage. I'm gonna get you and my pops on here at the same time so I can have a list of questions and be like, why y'all be so mad in the car?
I'm so mad in the car.
Because I'll be like, it's all good.
I'm so mad in the car. It don't make no sense, but I'm so mad in the car. But that's what I mean. Like, just showing up for the day is a battle. And that's why we have to have such grace and empathy and compassion for people. Because you don't know all of what they fought through just to be able to show up.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah, that's because I see it all the time. And I'm one of those people now, if I see someone not giving that grace, I'm like, I'll tell them, like, you don't know what they went through today. Maybe you need a reminder, like, you don't, like, you are that person sometimes. I'm just like, so, people be so quick to judge or, but I'll call them out. Like, nah, I don't do that.
That's good.
Because I'm heavy on just real, like, right now, just vibrating at a very high level spiritually. And then if it's anything negative around me, I'm going to either try to put it out or I'm going to just leave.
Yeah.
Nothing in between. Back in the day, I probably would have perpetuated it a little bit, but I don't know. I think like we were talking about before we started rolling, a lot of it has to do with the family aspect, and thinking about the girls, wifey, and how everything that I do, whether it's indirectly or directly, it's gonna affect them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the price is too high.
Way too high.
I mean, when they say you can't put a price on your peace.
that inhale, exhale said a lot.
You can't put a price on your peace, but then I also remember, but the price is really high. Like the cost of how much time you waste being distracted in your feelings about such and such thing. Like, it robs you of like what you should be doing and what you should be thinking about, and a new idea that God can give you about something that can make you a millionaire, but you can't even think about it because you're too busy still ruminating on this thing that you're offended by or betrayed by or angry about. And it is his plan to steal, kill, and destroy. And so he's destroying your time, your peace. And man, it costs it's so expensive.
It's so expensive.
It's so expensive when I look back at the things that I have lost because of that. You know, and I can't stay stuck there, because then that's another plan, right? To be like condemning yourself about all the things that you could have done differently. I can't change that.
Because that's another rabbit hole. And you're in the same boat with the other person. Yeah, but they're doing it about somebody else and you're doing it about yourself.
And it's so important to be able to look back and say, wow, that cost me so much. And anyone who does business well, right, that does investments, they've failed many times. They've invested millions of dollars in something and lost it all, right? Anyone who's a gambler, also same thing. And so I think about it. It's not that then you don't take high risk again. It's just this time when you take the high risk again, you learn to do it differently.
Yeah.
To not be as distracted, to not let yourself get caught up in the loss, right? And that's what reflection should be like. When I look back on my life and how much it cost me and how much time was wasted, then I'm a better investor now. Then invest in places and spaces that don't rob my peace, that don't rob my time, that I won't look back on this situation and say, man, that cost me too much. So now you get to go into this new season of your life with more on you, knowing I can't afford that again.
Right.
And so I'm working smarter, not harder.
For anybody who's listening, do you have like any kind of tips that'll help that person be more aware of like the space they're in and getting out of that? So like they're in this season of distraction, you know, because sometimes when we're in it, we don't even know that we're in it.
Well, for one, go listen to my sermon from Sunday.
Hey, come on, go listen to
it. Freedom in Christ Part 2, you know, when I was really thinking about what God wanted me to say, honestly, leading up to having to preach weeks, months, I've been really distracted. I've been really, really angry. I've been in a place that I didn't know how to get out of. Like, the old me, if we would have had this interview even a year ago, I'd be like, you need to be praying, you need to be fasting, and I could give you the formula, and honestly, none of it worked. I went on a fast. Day 1, I broke the fast. I started over, broke the fast again. Like and I'm usually good at fasting. Like, okay, you're gonna give up alcohol, or you're gonna not eat dairy or no sweets, and whatever. If I say it's 14 days, I do 14 days. This fast, I could not get it under control. I was so in what I was in, that worship wasn't working, prayer wasn't working, fasting wasn't working. I was like, God, what is this? Why am I wrestling so hard with this? And so it required me to be like David in the Bible. And for those who don't know the story of David, there was a moment in the Bible where David literally comes out into the streets naked, and he's just worshiping God naked. And I realized that I've put on a lot of stuff since when I first came to Christ, right? I've put on Bible study teacher, minister of the gospel, award-winning actress, and you put on these clothes that then hinder your process, or how, because there are these other things that are like, well, I'm supposed to do it this way because of this piece of clothing. I'm supposed to do it that way because I'm a husband, because I'm a dad, because I'm a mom, because I'm a wife, because I'm a teacher. Like, whatever that gets in the way of your healing, of your freedom, and you're bound to these titles, to these things. And I had to just strip it all. Again, it's another stripping.
It's like a knight with too much armor, limiting the mobility.
You're heavy. Yeah. You can't get there fast enough, right? Because it's like, And I wanted to get to my healing faster because it was distracting me from like what I'm really called to do. Because I don't feel like ministering. I don't feel like doing this. I don't want to do my audition. I have no motivation. Like I'm stuck in this place. And I just sat in my house and cried and wailed and just laid on my floor and was like, God, I don't know what this is. And I don't know what to do. And that's all I had. That's all I had. I don't know what to do. Everything I've been doing isn't working. So I'm just going to lay here until you give me a different instruction. I'm just going to lay here until I feel something different. Like, I don't know. Sometimes you don't know, and that has to be okay. I think we as a people need to know. That's why people read horoscopes, right? They need to know. There's such a manipulation in that. Like, and I was just telling my friend before I got here, I said, if you ever notice that the knowing comes in the unknown. Like in New York, sometimes I would get on a train stop I've never gotten off on just to discover a different part of the city I didn't know. Or trails here in LA. You go on the same trail all the time, but then there's like this little nook that you've never taken before. Yep. And you're like, let me try that way. That's an unknown. You don't know what's over there. But in that unknown, you discover something about that place, about yourself. And so we're so afraid to be in the unknown. We're so afraid to not know what to do. But it is in the not knowing that God can come in and really help you discover.
In the stillness.
And so when I finally arrested myself and gave away this idea that because I'm such and such, I'm supposed to know how to get to healing. The moment I said, God, I know nothing. You know everything. Then God could help me discover something else. And then God said, this is what you're going to preach. You're going to preach and teach about the honesty. And that's how I started my sermon. If we're being real, as the body of Christ, we're not honest. We're not honest with ourselves and we're not honest with people. That's why you have people who be like, I'm blessed and highly favored.
Right.
You know, they're not being honest about where they really are. And it keeps us bound. And so I said, okay, I'm scared, Lord, but I'm gonna do it. And so I preached on distraction and anger because I've been really angry lately.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, we got to put that at the bottom. Like, I go check it out so everybody can run to go check that out. I'm going to go check it out myself, you know, because that's something that even as of late, mainly distractions.
Yeah.
And what I've realized recently, it's been distraction in the form of overproduction and
overstimuli.
Yeah, and especially with like learning new things. There's like a trap within that. Like, oh, I'm learning. Almost like we were talking about earlier about reading books all the time. Instead of me reading books all the time, I'm taking courses. I'm watching these YouTube videos and all that type of stuff. And then you reach a point where it's like, where's the implementation?
How are you applying it?
Now you done learned all this stuff and you ain't did not one of those 50 bullets you done wrote down, you know? Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna go check that out as well. So, but before we get out of here, I definitely want to hear about, you know, if you want to talk about it, what you got going on in the back channels, you know, if you want to share the exciting news with the people.
There's so much. I mean, God is so good, right? Like he will multiply your gifts and dreams that were deferred can come to pass, you know. Because my father was a writer and my father was a poet, I wanted to be like him. And then in my rebellious years, because our relationship was really complicated, I wanted to be nothing like him. And so I ran from writing for a really long time. But poetry was my diary. I don't know what it is. Journaling is great. And journaling is really good for people. I haven't mastered the consistency of that. Like, I will start a diary and then I go back to it and a third of it is empty. Like I just, in my lifetime, it hasn't been something that I've yet been, I want to claim that there'll be a time where I'm in there and I'm writing consistently. But you know, I couldn't do that. And so poetry became a safe space. When my parents would fight, when dysfunction was happening in the house, it would be my outlet to write how I would feel. When I was going through a breakup, and so when my dad died, I started writing poetry again as a way to honor him, because National Poetry Month is the same month of my father's birthday, which is April. And so every April I would write poems and I would put it on my blogs. But during the pandemic, I did my first open mic. Like I was like, I'm just gonna perform my poems, because I've never done that. And then there was a scholarship being offered by an independent publishing company to produce your first book. And I was like, okay. So I asked the Lord, I said, okay, I'm just gonna try it. And I won the scholarship.
Amazing.
And I'll never forget, when I won the scholarship, the Lord brought to my attention a book that was on my bookshelf. And it was a book that said, The Young Writer's Guide to Getting Published. My dad took me to Barnes & Nobles, and there he bought me that book because I said I wanted to be published just like him. And in that moment, when I got my scholarship, I was like, wow, I totally forgot about this dream. I totally forgot that I wanted to be a published author. That this even still mattered to me. And so that moment was for my 12-year-old girl, and it's been a journey. It's taken me 2 years to because that's the thing. When you come face to face with your dream, and one that you totally put away and forgot and thought would never happen, then everything's going to come to distract you, to lie to you, to tell you. I mean, I can't tell you how many times the devil would come into my mind and say, no one's going to buy this book. No one's going to read it. There's all these famous poets. They're better than you. Just all this stuff that's just
all that doubt.
Just a lie. But here we are. The book is done.
Book is done. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's being edited, and then it'll go to my publisher for the illustration, the book cover to be made, and it'll drop this summer. My first
That's
ever.
amazing.
And it's crazy because I got a DM from somebody that was like, hey, so I'm starting back up my poetry night and we're looking for someone to headline. And, your friend told me that you're the best poet. And my friend alley-ooped for me to and whether or not that happens or not, it doesn't change that here I am being considered.
Right.
To be a headliner.
Right.
A headliner poet next to the names of other people who have hosted before that again, you're always in our humanness and in our frailty. We think so small compared to God.
So small.
And that's why it says he will do exceedingly abundantly beyond anything you could ask or think. Because you couldn't think it. You couldn't think that you would be a headliner because I don't have 100,000, 500,000 followers.
Yeah, because if it was up to
that's
you,
who it goes to.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it.
But the favor of the Lord is not fair, but it is final because God has the final say. My friend always says that favor ain't fair, but it's final.
It's final. I love
that. And I'm
that.
Ooh, yep, because when he said what he said, you gonna headline this. You're gonna open up for such and such. Your invention is. Shark Tank might have said no, but guess what? You're in Target stores all over the place. There's so many stories. Jennifer did not win American Idol. Look what Oscar winner has her own show. There's all these examples of you couldn't thought or imagine where he'd take you. And so here I am about to be a published author.
I love it.
Just another title put on.
And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I was like, I would really love if you could come on, because I'm really big on highlighting people who, I am inspired by, I admire. And, there's always been, especially with me, a fight of the jack of all trades, negative connotation, and you shouldn't do multiple things, and you shouldn't embrace your multiple gifts and things of that nature. So I love to have people come here and talk about, look, I do all
the things. Well, before we go, can I ask you a question?
Of course, anything.
I would love, because we didn't tell the people how we met. So I would love for you to tell the people how we met and what your impression of me was.
Okay, so
I always love to hear what people think when they first meet me.
I know. I would say, okay, so we met on set
You
of
did.
Cameos
Short film.
Uh-huh. And I remember meeting you, and you had an energy to you, and you still do. Like, you know, you are who you are. That's very what's the word I want to say? It draws you in. So we're in the living room, a room full of people, and it's like small space, but you were commanding the attention, not because you were trying to, it's just who you are. You know, there's an energy about you and personality about you. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, she seems cool. Like, she's not afraid to be herself, you know? And I think, especially at that point in time, you know, it was still like, I've been here, it'll be 7 years this year.
Yeah, we met in 2018.
Yeah, so that was like the first half of me, you know, being out here. So I'm still kind of getting acclimated and adjusting to being around even certain types of people.
Right.
So whenever I find someone that I'm kind of drawn to, like, oh, she's genuine. You know, oh, he's genuine over there. Then I gravitate towards, you know. So that is what I thought about in the moment, because you stood out like a sore thumb, because I had been so used to people putting on and even hiding who they are, like even people I know.
Right.
I'm like, you don't act like that. Like, who is this person that's like in this room all of a sudden?
Right.
I was just with you yesterday.
Right, and you was not.
Yeah. You know. So that was the biggest thing for me, you know, somebody who was just unapologetically herself.
Yeah.
And that's something that I always love to see.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, I had no idea we'd be sitting down doing this.
Right.
But it's part of the reason why. I always feel like we are attracted to certain people for specific things that we may not see in the moment, but we will see at some point. You know? And there was a reason why I was like, oh, she seems cool. And then seeing the journey, even from afar.
Right.
I was
a lot has changed.
I was like, oh, we gotta talk. And we gotta talk in front of the people. You know, because like I said before we started, I was like, I want to just shed light.
Yeah.
Because I know what I've been through in LA.
Yeah.
By myself.
Right.
With all these feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
And I don't want that for anybody else.
Right.
You know? So I was like, oh, I would love for her to share her story.
It's so good. Yeah. I started my Bible study 2 weeks after I met you.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I would like to say I got something to do with that. No,
I mean, it's crazy. 5 years went by. Like
just that. Like that, yeah.
I'm like, it'll be 5 years this summer.
That's amazing. You gonna do anything big? Another Jesus party?
Not another Jesus party. We go on a retreat every year.
Oh, nice.
So we're gonna, you know, we go out to the wilderness, no phones. We get with the Lord. And so that's our annual retreat to like celebrate the women's group. So we're gonna do that this year.
Have you ever gone to Joshua Tree?
I have once, but really fast. I did a play in the desert, and we decided to go to Joshua Tree on one of my days off. But I need to go and like do what y'all be doing on the gram, rent a house, be out there in the outdoor bathtub.
Because I've heard some things about just the energy there, you know, and like not even just from people's personal experiences, but even like scientifically speaking. Like, so I want to go. I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know if I'm going to do any ayahuasca and all that, but I just want to go.
That we need a part 2 to the podcast. Talk about how I feel about that.
But no, I know we for sure gonna be here forever. I want to make sure that I give you your flowers and again tell you that even from afar, you know, I am immensely inspired by you. I admire what you do, and I'm always receiving the message. And I'm a fan. You know, fan and friend, and I appreciate you for sitting down with me, taking time out your day. You know, time is expensive, and we spent a lot today.
You know, good fellowship, iron sharpening iron.
Of course, yeah, it was a good time. Yeah. It was a good time. Are you gonna bless us with some spoken word today?
Oh, I can. Yay.
And we gotta do it on the spot.
I can read something.
We can cut to somewhere if you want to do it right now. It's cool.
Yeah, I can read something from my book. I'm so excited about this collection. I'm really excited. My book is called Between Spaces because I have, as we talked about, my name and my identity. I've felt
it's a great title.
Yeah, I felt between a lot of spaces. And then in life, you're between spaces, right? You're in transition. Like, it just means a lot. Or like reading between the lines when you're like dealing with people. There's just so many instances about being between spaces.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's what my collection's called. That's what the Lord gave me. Plus, but in my mouth, there's this big space, right? and it's been part of my identity for so long, but it was also something for so long that I was very ashamed of, or people made fun of me, or people told me I would never make it in this business if I didn't close my gap, or people, when I was first going to move here, I remember one of my family members was like, "You're really going to Hollywood with a gap?
Really?
Like, you're not going to close it?" And so there was so much, like, even throughout my 9 years here, if I'm being honest, again, this place, there are a lot of beautiful people here. And it's not that I'm not beautiful, but again, you're up against the people who beauty is their occupation.
Right.
Like,
and according to a standard.
A certain aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was telling you, it's a full-time job to look like that. Like, I'm pretty. I think I'm pretty.
Yeah, for sure.
But to look like that, people have a team. You know what I'm saying? Like, Beyonce was naturally beautiful, but the way she looked right now is because she got a team.
Yeah, for sure.
So we set ourselves up to be pinned to just an aesthetic that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I say all that to say my space is something I've embraced, and now I'm writing between spaces, right? And so each chapter is a different. So chapter 1 is who are you? Chapter 2 is family ties. Chapter 3 is lovers and lies. And chapter 4 is God and truth. Because all those things inform a different space of my life, and also being between spaces because of those things. And so
I love it.
One of my favorite poems is Between the World and Me. And I wrote it because I was teaching a class at Fairfax High School. And we were reading that book, Between the World and Me, by Tahashi P. Coates. And so, between the world and me, what did it mean? When I thought there wasn't a place for me, I wasn't ready to not be Black enough, not Latin enough. Caught up between two worlds, wanting to belong, growing up was tough. My hair was too kinky, so they gave me a big cut. Then they criticized my accent, saying, "Are you really Spanish or what? Stop talking Black, stop talking rough. You're Latin? You're not sexy enough. But wait, stop claiming Black. Go back to your Latino camp because you have a language in the country you can go back. So why check off the box that says Black? Divide and conquer, this ignorance was whack. Now I'm all grown up, this vibrant woman full of swag, and I dare you to tell me that I ain't Black."
Come on now. Come on now. If y'all at home, come on, snap with your boy. Y'all know y'all want to snap. I don't care where you listening. Go snap them fingers.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? I remember you sending me the video of you performing.
Yes.
What I loved about it was the energy that you brought to it. You know, you weren't just up there like just reciting a poem.
Yeah.
You know, it was.
I'm a performer.
Yeah, you know, and that's the beauty of it. Like you bring us into your world.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't feel like you were reciting a poem or even reading from your phone.
Right.
I could see everything. You know, I could see the words and feel the words. So I appreciate you sharing your time.
Thank you.
Your babies.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Watch the sermon. Get the book this summer.
Yeah, all that.
All that.
Let the people know where they can find you.
Listen, branding, we were talking about, I'm Selly Hangout, all of the things. My website, my social media, my email, Selly Hangout. Because you want to hang out with me, don't you?
Come on now.
CELI Hangout. Yeah.
Franceli.
Yes,
come on now. Me. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Will the World Podcast. I am your host, Jazz Will. And until next time, peace and love.
Peace and love.